Down the Camel Straight, he has got such massive overspeed. Look at that move from the number.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ride around the world.
I'm Mick Claridge, and I'm going to ride around the world on my bike.
My son, he gave me advice at the start of this ride, and he looked at me and just said, "Dad, don't be a moron."
Let me do my animal signal to gain their respect.
How's it going, Sally?
Yeah, I'm alright, Mick. How's it going?
Worse than that bit in Lord of the Rings where they go into the top and the spiders in the tunnel. I'm just hoping there's a spider at the top of this one to kill me. Freezing.
And I failed. I moroned up the ride.
When it comes to the streets of Long Beach, you never know what to expect. It's a track with plenty of tradition when it comes to open-wheel racing in the state of California, but it's also a racetrack where you can have senses of calm and serenity. Or you can have rush hour traffic where you end up being upside down in the fountain with race cars. You never know what can happen when it comes to this facility. But today, we're about to find out what will happen here at the Global SimRacing Channel as we welcome you to today's coverage of Absolute Beginners and its Formula Neagle Cup for round number 2 of Season 29 from iRacing's virtual Long Beach circuit. My name's Justin Prince. Alongside me for today's round is Jake Sperry, along with our director Zach Johnson. He's using cameras provided by the great Dougie Beard. This racetrack came to fruition on the service to its full completion just a couple years ago. Let's learn more about it with our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to Long Beach. Nestled into the south side of Los Angeles and running alongside the Pacific Ocean, this street circuit has made the port area world famous. Both Formula One and IndyCar have called this 2-mile, 11-turn circuit home. Winning here has become a prestige worth boasting about among open-wheel pilots. Indeed, the winners list includes the likes of Lauda, Andretti, Unser, Montoya, Power, and many other legendary names in racing. Much like its European sister over in Monaco, it's short, tight, and punishing. But unlike Monte Carlo, this circuit emerged from a rundown piece of California coast to grow into the glamorous location it is today. Down into Turn 1 at the end of Shoreline Drive is where the majority of overtakes tend to be made. But sneaky passes can also pop up in places like 6 on the way into Pine Avenue, or Turn 9 at the end of Seaside Way. There's also 2 distinctive landmarks notorious for causing track blockages. The fountain section, with all its beauty, is a single-file affair save for the first lap. And the hairpin has been a staple here, even though it's changed locations a few times. In fact, that last hairpin not only includes the dangers of getting tangled with another car, but the important nature of getting the best exit you can to keep your rival from having a chance to pass you into the first corner. It feels appropriate that California's signature street track is a hop, skip, and a jump away from the beach. But while others might be trying to attack the surf, our drivers today will be attacking the corners instead.
Welcome back once more, as that was your GSRC track guide for the circuit for Long Beach, California. Now, Jake, let's quickly talk about this circuit, and we were talking a bit before today's coverage got underway. This is a track where attrition can come into play in very fierce ways.
I think a lot of people who look at Long Beach have one understanding. They think it's very nice track, essentially. This is the sort of place where a lot of iRacers, when it comes to officials, try and avoid, because it is very narrow, it is very tight, it is very technical, it is very easy for a race to end. And that goes from the run to Toyota corner, turn number 2, out on the circuit, the tight and technical sections they drive around, the aquarium here in Long Beach, which goes through the fountain, turns 5, 6, over to the TK turn at turn 7. But crucially, that final run, Firestone to the Indy left to the hairpin, that is pretty much the final places you can get a pass done on this lap. And that hairpin might just be the tightest corner on road courses on iRacing. So you have to be at your absolute best to get through. It is one line suits all, and if you are on the wrong line through the hairpin, then you've either got 3 choices. You either go straight into the wall, you somehow miraculously make it, or you decide it's time for a 3-point turn.
Lots to discuss and lots to see when it comes to today's action. For those tuning in for the first time when it comes to this series, 50 minutes up on the clock for today's race. Drivers in the midst of 10-minute qualifying, group qualifying, after a 1-hour practice session to get all settled in for today's round. And these competitors have the chance to work together in turn to be able to set their fastest times, to be able to get valuable track position. Because as we've seen in the past, you never know what can happen on the starting blocks. And in turn, we may see lots of competitors try in tandem, such as Frederick Neptune and Sebastian Krumholtz, who nearly make contact into the hairpin.
Well, that's just how close they need to get. So Stefan Krumholtz is really trying to push the margins and get those times going. I do love the fact that this is open qualifying in comparison to what is traditionally closed qualifying that you would get, for example, in an official race, which means that everybody's out here on track together. Everyone's working to get those times. Nick Vaughan Roberts, currently the fastest driver out there with a 1:31.815, just a 1/4 of a second clear of Nathan Wade, who set the initial time sheets alight with some good lap times out there overall. And keep an eye on the driver who jumps up into 4th position, David J. Burns, or as he likes to be called, Third Degree. He will certainly be looking to try and challenge forward. He'll be hoping to get some good time out of there. And the key to this race is 15 minutes long, so there is a lot of strategy that can work into play. All drivers will be, at some point during this race, guaranteed to pit.
It's going to be interesting how Burns does, especially with the speed showcased in Season 28 for those who've seen the finale for that campaign. Nathan Wade has the momentum, though, for the start of this season after Daytona. That was where he picked up the victory and led the most laps, 11 in that race, with an average best time of 2 minutes flat, 0.022. You see the 24. Currently dragging right now a bit. Trying to pick up the tempo. These drivers getting very close to the limit of bottoming out here to try and set their fastest times. Wade a little bit quicker there on the fast lap by a 1:31.553, despite the right side pod scraping the whole straightaway here.
Yeah, and it just shows you how important a setup is around this track. You have to be very much keeping an eye out on how close you want to be running to these barriers, and pretty much you would say that this is one of the bumpier tracks as well, because this isn't a circuit where you have the benefit and the love of being out there on circuit with a very nicely paved brand new track. This will have all of the characteristics of thousands upon thousands, you could say millions of cars running through the city streets. And I would say what makes life very difficult as well is that you'll have different elements of bump and difficulty around this track, especially through the middle sector. It's going to be very bumpy and very difficult to pick your line, but it will be a bit easier, Justin. You have that different transfer through the final couple corners, because the last section quite literally goes through a car park.
Absolutely. And you see how much of the bumps Wade is trying to take here. Doesn't count for an incident point, though, when it comes to that 24. And keep in mind, lots of potential heartbreaking sections where you make one slip up, potentially can make severe contact. In the midst of some of the battles today, we've seen plenty of times things get bottled up in that run to the hairpin. Even quicker for Wade, meanwhile, a 1:31.337. That's a 0.5 advantage over Vaughan Roberts currently on the board.
more than half a tenth. It's half a second in itself. So
yeah,
you can see how Nathan Wade has been flying. Kevin Budgeon jumped for the most fractional of fractional seconds up to second. He gets bumped down to third by Nick Vaughan-Roberts. And this is where drivers now are starting to try and find a quick train in front of them, and they need that positioning. They're running out of time. They've only got 3 minutes left. But if you can find yourself on a quick draft train, you do have one long straight or two long straights where you can make draft in these very, very important skip barbers count. The first place it's going to really matter is the run towards turn 2 at Toyota. The other place is the run to the Firestone turn all the way over at turn number 9 out on track. It is so telling in these machines how strong the draft is. This is the sort of car where at Watkins Glen, for example, another American circuit, these cars, if you're within a second heading up the hill as one car pulls off and takes the tow back to pit, if one car is within a second, they have a chance to make the overtake down the straight. This will be a case of you might gain 3-4 tenths of a second here today just on the straights alone.
That's going to be something to watch for with this pack. Lots of slipping and sliding, keep in mind, too, in the midst of this pack. Jeff Randall amongst those slipping hard. You also have Kevin Budgeon, who is very quick in qualifying. So far, third on the board. Midst of the draft. Lots of smoke being kicked up in the backdrop from fourth in line once more. How will the drivers fail it in these times? They have less than 2 minutes to work with. Still 132 for Krumholtz, a 132.3. Then a invalidated lap time. Titus DeYoung backing it down to 132.6. None of them picked up the times really inside the top 10.
No, and they are now starting to hit that limit. 1:30 remaining on the clock. So any driver who has passed the stripe right now knows that they are on, essentially, their final flying lap. And there is a key difference here to an open qualifying session compared to a closed qualifying session. When the checkered flag comes out and the clock hits zeros, one driver spins around, and that will be qualifying over there for them. When that checkered flag hits zero, you are allowed to complete any lap time that you start.
That'll be the critical thing. How many drivers take that opportunity? We see sometimes drivers elect to slow it on down despite that chance. They don't feel the confidence. See if anyone else continues to chug along. Von Roberts trying to back up a little bit, looking for a bit of space maybe. Krumholtz is going full tilt, heading towards this final 30 seconds or so by the time they get past the stripe.
I tell you who's right on the back of Nick Vaughan-Roberts. It's Kevin Budgeon, and that is some wily positioning right now. Now, clever coming off of the exit for Nick Vaughan-Roberts. He's trying to really maximize the exit as Nathan Wade goes even quicker. A 31.279. His gap now 1.8 tenths of a second. So now he's got that to play with at this point in time. But still, with Nick Vaughan-Roberts and Kevin Budgeon together out on track, every lap is going to mean so much. And Georg Matushinsky moving up to fourth just before the checkered flag. I certainly wasn't expecting the 74 to get close today.
What a charge ahead after being a fair bit behind. Was on his own too. Nathan Wade, keep in mind, has done the same on his own. Wade has a chance to be able to bump up the time even higher if he chooses in the 24. Dave Burns has just completed his run in fifth currently. Wade just scraped the wall possibly, though. We'll see if this lap counts.
Nothing on my end suggesting that Nathan Wade's lap is invalidated right now, but he's going to have to find a little bit more. He knows that he can't see how quick the drivers behind him are going at this point in the form of Nick Vaughan-Roberts, in the form of Kevin Budgeon, and he's going to need a little bit of fun out there to get that time. Club UK and Ireland, he is going to try and make the drive over to the line. Ludwig Sauer's just jumped up to 11th fastest at this point, but what about Nathan Wade? He blew the engine coming across the line, a 31.7, because he knew he was not going to be quicker on his time. It's going to be a look back. Nick Vaughan-Roberts has caught Stefan Krumholtz over the course of his lap, so has he been held up in any way, shape or form, or has the draft helped? The draft certainly helped. 30.9, what a lap. Budgeon up to second, Randall up to fourth.
Good coordination from that pack. It took the whole session. But now it is 1-2-4 from its three main counterparts. Most of the drivers, in fact all, have completed their qualifying runs, as Vaughn Roberts is now at the top of the board with the session complete for the skid markers. He and Budgeon were 2 and 3 in their previous race as a team. They have a chance to start 1-2 today because of that coordination we just seen.
And I tell you what, coordination in iRacing is absolutely key. How many times do we talk about it when it comes to the professional ranks, that you need a strong, dedicated, coordinated team in order to help you get to the very top? It's the same pretty much everywhere you go. You work, especially in a draft-centric car like this Skip Barber Formula 2000, you really need to be on your game. I tell you what, that train absolutely was.
I felt just to complete that lap, by the way, you just seen, but in towards the back. But it's time to see how they'll start towards the front for today's action. 26 drivers, 25 setting qualifying laps here today. Vaughn Roberts, the pole sitter, with a 1:30.9 over Kevin Budgeon, a 1-2 for the skid markers. Nathan Wade, the defending race winner from Daytona for WM Racing, starts in third, with Jeff Randall in the fourth spot. Then is Machuczynski starting in fifth, alongside Third Degree Burns, who's in sixth. Alexander Wilford starts in seventh today, alongside Thorsten Seifert. Then it's Wojciech Polacek, alongside Gordon Vandenbergen, the rounding out of the top 10, Jake.
11th position belongs then to Stefan Krumholz, with Josh Brain in 12th position. 13th will belong to Dave Dowson, with Ludwig Sauer 14th. Remco Pleischia will go from 15th, along with Titus de Jong, with Nick Carty and Marcus Beifeld on row 9. Row 10 will see Christopher Geros and Frederick Neptun rounding out the 20.
21st goes to Duco Veenstra. Then it is Nicholas Anderson. Vladimir Sechkal starts in 23rd. Apstad, Loden, and then Melhorn rounding up the 26 entrants today. Melhorn did not set a qualifying lap. Final few moments before we get rolling. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't expect Matthias Melhorn to set any times in this session. He's not actually in there, but watch out for the opening couple corners and breakaways. If a couple drivers can break away early, it's just going to be a race about them. Anything else, we're not going to see too much of anything at all. This is going to be a really important race, just waiting on 24, Nathan Wade.
Wade's missed the start. Now Wade will start from the pit lane. The green lights are out. We're underway from Long Beach. And a buffer for Forfan back to deal with, as third place and Wade, the defending race winner, did not make the launch. The rest of the drivers roar their way for the first time, heading towards Aquarium Way. Budgeon peeking a bit to the left of his teammate. Vaughn Roberts holds on. A send for Randall gets him to third. Machuczynski holds on to fourth as they head to the fountain for the first time.
Gordon Vandenbergen had a fantastic launch into turn 2. He gained about 4 places by just being brave on the inside and braking as late as he could possibly dare, so a good start from him. But the key to that is that they didn't use all of the 2 minutes, Justin, to get up onto the grid. What was key was that Nathan Wade actually took to the grid, saw something wasn't right, escaped back into the pit, and by that point, too late. Couldn't quite get the car sorted. He had to start from the pit, so something was clearly wrong, but they're battling up at the front then as they run through, and Kevin Budgeon now takes the race lead away from Nick Vaughn Roberts.
That's after a major slide for Vaughn Roberts. We'll see if Vaughn Roberts wants to get that lead back, heading off towards Firestone Indy left in the hairpin. No major pull for the top 2, but third is up for grabs. Machuczynski charges up, into the wall goes Randall, into the tires goes Machuczynski, collecting Randall.
Randall had nowhere to go there. Matushinsky now has got a really awkward turnaround job, and he's got to be so careful about this that he doesn't get disqualified for going backwards then, and he just about gets away with it, gets the car turned around, and he'll be able now to drive forward, but he does have the black and orange mechanical flag, which means he will have to repair his car. Good news in this series, though, you do get one fast repair. His race not over yet.
Still a long ways back as a result of the trouble, though, to 24th position. Nathan Wade will jump up to that spot now. Up at the very front, Budgeon leads the pack for the first lap of the race. Burns has quietly, with all that trouble we just seen, jumped up to third and is right there to show what he can do with his third-degree burn speed.
He certainly can. He is a flying Scotsman, is David Burns, and there is a famous Scottish Burns who was a rally legend in Richard Burns, and he might have to channel his inner Richard Burns today over the curbs. This car very much is a tight machine, to be said. Yes, it does like to get loose in the rear, but when I say tight, it means it's going to be very bumpy here today. You're going to have to be pretty much clutching tight over the curves because you have to cling on with everything that you've got. A little bit of a wiggle from what was David Burns, and suddenly Alexander Wilford then in the 79 is going to move to the outside. It's going to try and steal this position away, but lifts off of it, moving through into the right. And one of the keys to make this car go as fast as possible is how late you can brake and how you can modulate the throttle with the brake as you go through. Effectively, what we're talking about then is how you can really work forward using the throttle and the brake at the same time. And look at the smoke that actually just came off of the final corner.
That's in part because Budgeon nearly spun it out towards the wall. Here comes Vaughn Roberts for the race lead. The swap back is on. The 27 back up to the point. Budgeon lets him have the space. The teammates continue to play up at the front. Burns right there in the popcorn seat with Wilford should say, in that group as well as Randall. A bit of trouble. Another slide for Budgeon. A big checkup as Burns just avoids contact from Wilford.
Yeah, there's also been an issue for Titus de Jong along with Christopher Giros. They had a coming together at the TK turn last lap, so they've also had some problems. But again, it is a case of Kevin Budgeon being every which way of sideways. It does take a little while to get the tyres up to temperature. Once you do, that's where the confidence starts to come in. But the key there to all of that was Nick Vaughan Roberts trying a little bit too hard, getting into the wall slightly, which is never a good sign. He's got away with it somehow, but crucially, I think Kevin Budgeon's role is to be a rear guard at this point in time because he had every license to go forward and attack that position. He crucially didn't on car 27.
And part of the reason for all the squiggles and the loose moments there, Vaughn Roberts had scraped that wall coming down Aquarium Way, right front wing damage for the 27, and that may hurt Vaughn Roberts here. It's a massive dig in, about a 45-degree angle, in fact, on that wing damage up at the front as he tries to test how bad it is. You see just how much it's pushed in from on board above the helmet.
God, there is a lot of damage there, and he'll have to be careful because he's got a 12-car train that it sticks, or sorry, now a 9-car train to Crumholes because the battle going on for 10th position has absolutely opened up massively as the leaders fly through the aquarium section once again in the fountain, and ultimately with the front train and the way they're battling, they're wanting to try and break this train up. The more they battle at the front, the more it closes up. Dave Dowson right now finds himself in 10th position after Pleicher, Brain and Crumholes have all been battling about on the, sorry, not Crumholes, sorry, but Dowson, Brain, Pleicher and Ludwig Sauer have been battling over the course of this lap.
Currently, those drivers have lost 2 seconds to this main pack. Ashitsky now getting the fast slap out to the faster pair for reference sake, and you see how tight things are getting in terms of those barriers, in terms of some of the battling. But you mentioned that battling going on for 10th. It is getting a bit busy compared to the rhythmatic pattern. How about 3 wide? That is DeYoung straight from the pit lane, trying to get by all this. That is Josh Brain having to lift hard, now taking 3 wide yet again for the inside. This time that is Ludwig Sauer zipping on by to gain 2 spots.
Sauer probably just had the sweetest move in the world. Josh Brain getting out of the way there in the middle of all of that. Dave Dowson doing just enough to lose a couple places, but they have to stay alert to it because they've completely dropped off the leading train. Alexander Wilford now sets the fastest lap of the race on a 31.792, and now you've got to be a little bit concerned on that front train, and again sliding for the race lead is not ideal. But this second group suddenly finding itself stuck behind lap traffic, it is a little bit naughty, but there is no requirement for the lap traffic to jump out of the way. So they're doing well. It's Remco Pleicher, sorry, who is now there in position with Sauer, with Brain, with Dowson, and Titus de Jong 6 back. So the 2 teammates in the same train. One of them, though, is 1 lap down.
Pleicher leading this group. You mentioned there, absolutely. Dowson after getting past losing ground. That rhythm pattern starting to come in just 7 minutes into the action so far. But the main question is, how patient do the leaders end up being, knowing you've got a driver with damage leading that pack? And then you have the second pack, yes, losing ground, but right there in case things get a little bit too backed up, if they start working together and calm down here.
No, I think they'll have the patience of a saint at this point in time because the front two are teammates. Mistake going through the hairpin. The Kevin Budgeon starts to open it up just a little bit for the group, but he got away with it. That was about as close, as difficult as it possibly could have done at that point in time for Kevin Budgeon. He just left it very open, but still got the fastest lap despite that. So he gave himself a bit of a gap, and it was a kind of a clever move, really, because Nick Vaughan-Roberts was so aggressive into the final corner, and it meant Kevin Budgeon could be really aggressive out of it to cover off any move from David Burns in third place. Wilfert can only watch, so can Jeff Randall, Wojtek Potaszek, who's in there, Thorsten Seifert, who is also there, and Gordon Vondenbergen hanging on the back, Stefan Krumholz.
This is going to be intriguing. Now the strategy fares out. Trouble just now for Dowson. Dowson is in the wall, the 12 car. He just had to tow, as that's the reason you see him now in the pit lane. A hard slide in the midst of the pack that was in the battle for what was 13th position prior to the spin.
And how did Marcus Byfeld avoid that in terms of Dave Dowson? Because Dowson actually clipped the wall off the exit of the fountain. And I believe we're going to get a look here on the Global SimRacing Channel replay. So Dowson able to go through this section. He's a bit too aggressive, gets a bit of the grass, hits the wall, and then, has to go hard right as Byfeld. He would have pretty much looked at that and gone, well, that's a free position, but I wasn't pretty comfortable making that on the run towards turn 5.
So as a result, Dowson having to take a major tow. That lasted, Dion, for reference, almost 2 minutes. But the last driver who had to do a similar situation in this one. Von Roberts again, fastest lap despite the wing damage. As these cars continue to get quicker and quicker for some with the fuel burn. Top 5 now have broken away from 6th on back. So the pack is starting to build up into smaller groups. A bit of smoke for 6th has caused some checkups there. But right now, that pace definitely on for that top 5 in the 131 6s to 8s, for comparison's sake, compared to those running behind, running the 131 8s to 132 flats.
I'd keep an eye on Nathan Wade in the 24. Of course, you missed the start here on lap 7 of this race. He's on the back now of Nick Carty and Frederick Neptun right now. The fight for 15th and 14th positions, as there is a little look now in that fight for 3rd. Alexander Wilfert up over the crest and back down as they drive past the Long Beach Convention Center on the right-hand side, and they will now be thinking about how their battle goes. But keep an eye on Nathan Wade, because he just set on that last lap the fastest lap of anybody.
Nathan Wade currently is in 16th place for reference on the racetrack after missing the start. After being one of the quickest drivers in qualifying, here's a look, in fact, at Wade and his pack. Nick Carty up the road. You also have Neptune in here in the midst of things. Keep in mind, Wade does have wing damage. He has twisted around that left front wing on the 24, trying to get through the traffic.
Kevin Budgeon, for a brief moment, had the fastest lap of the race, were it not for the fact that Alexander Wilfert in 4th has just taken that away. So there's racing all over the place, and there's a battle going on a little bit further back as well, as the lap traffic of Titus de Jong will look to be put a lap down by Nathan Wade. Should get out of the way. This has gone 29 seasons, or this is the 29th season of the Absolute Beginners, and no matter what has gone on in the Absolute Beginners League, Justin, the one thing that they've been good at, better than most leagues out there, is how they have traffic management and how they allow drivers to get out of the way. It is pretty much not a Wild West. It is very organised, and I think it has been a very well-run league for a very long time.
Trouble. That's Klaus Loden, who may have had problems in the moments or so, has got major damage regardless of that. And it was trouble down one of the straightaways in through Seaside Way, East Seaside Way specifically. That was from 19th position. This is as the pit window is projected to be open. Kai Abstad just came in as well. Stefan Krumholz have both come in for pit stops, for scheduled stops, it appears, after 7 to 8 laps for them.
Yeah, it's a shame for Klaas Laden. I think they just got in a little bit too hot into what is a very, very tight corner. And it is pretty much the bread and butter of a street circuit, the 90-degree right, which effectively tightens on the exit. You have to have such a late entry into the corner that if you are just a little bit too hot into it, you're in a bit of trouble. Fast lap of the day then, changing again to Wojtek Potaszek, and that's crucial because Potaszek is sat at about 9/10 of a second right now. He needs to close up that gap to Jeff Randall.
Absolutely, with the 2/10 picked up at least last time on Randall, that will be helpful for the 28 machine. As you see how things are faring out in the line, he is there, in fact, within 5 car lengths now. He is burning Thorsten Seifert as well as Gordon Vandenbergen back into this mix as well.
Yeah, and Gordon, after his good opening corner, has been very quiet behind Thorsten Seifert out there on track. And speaking of troubles out on track, that is not a good look for Christopher Giros, who, of course, has already run into troubles in this race. But I believe this will be the first time he'll have to use his fast repair out there. So Giros really struggling, just thrown into the wall then at the final section, and 3 wheels on my wagon, very similar to Michael Schumacher in the almightiest and rainiest Spa Grand Prix ever.
Wonder where the 4th wheel just went. It was there before the pit lane, at least. I believe it's off to find a new car. Either way, we're approaching halfway here, so expecting pit stops in the near future here, Jake. This pit entry, pretty smooth. It's more so in terms of the delta time that can be critical for some later on in this one.
I think what's clever is Seifert now side by side with Vandenbergen, who's just gone through on the inside and has taken 7th position away. So a change of places in this pack, and they are starting to drop off of this pack right now, Vandenbergen and Seifert right now. So they've got to be careful. But I think strategy is
race leader.
A huge slide for the lead, a huge slide for Nick Vaughan Roberts. I think the key is leave a car out in front as long as possible. That way you can burn their fuel and their stop will be longer, because in this series, there is a huge difference between an extra litre or 2 because they don't fill the cars up just in the traditional fuel nozzle way. They fill them up with jugs.
40% the fuel limit as well. That is just 2.08 liters projected. But Vaughan Roberts, after going over the rumble strips hard, has a problem. Both ends of the wing on the front end of the car have been crumpled up. What can Vaughan Roberts do here until the pit stops is the question. Nearly to the back end of Budgeon once again.
Well, I'd say that his car would feel slightly more balanced now, the fact that he's got that there. But just look at the right-hand side tyre. Actually got negative camber on it at this point in time. The tyre's actually leaning the opposite way to what it's supposed to do. Normally, tyres set inwards. The tyre camber on the front right tyre is actually leaning the opposite way. It's leaning out. Gordon Vandenbergen, at that moment in time, though, has just set the fast lap of the race. So he is desperately trying to get onto that group. But it's the front right, which I think is the big problem. It's pointing the wrong way.
Will that be the opening Wilford waits for, or has been waiting for at least, to be able to get around here is the question. Can they get around here? There is the fast repair available. That's also the other part. Can Vaughan Roberts hold on to the track position until that fast repair can come in and fix it?
Well, these are all hypotheticals right now. It's clear that he can stay on the pace of Kevin Budgeon at this point in time. In all of this, Alexander Wilford, by the way, has jumped up into 3rd ahead of David Burns. So Burns now back into 4th position. Randall still in 5th. Wojtek Potaszek in 6th position right now. So they will happily be there sitting and waiting, looking for opportunities to attack. And let's not forget in this race, Stefan Krumholz and Georg Matuszyński. So Matuszyński, I think, is going to be a little short on his fuel calculations and numbers to get himself home to the end. But Krumholz, remember, has come in a little bit earlier, has pit a bit earlier than everyone else. He might be a driver to just keep an eye out on in the number 744 out there on track, currently circulating in 20th.
Look, we're approaching 32 minutes up on the clock already, halfway at 25 minutes. So with an estimated 22 laps to go this time around, if anyone's able to find that rhythm forward here. For Wilford, keep in mind, amongst those looking for the strong points, compare that to some of those who are looking for bounce backs. Vandenbergen, we've mentioned his name, charging forward, finished 15th last time out after qualifying to the back of the pack at Daytona. It's been a strong recovery. Wilford with a bit of a slide as more drivers with troubles.
Wilford then starting to find out just how difficult this track is. This is not a car, though, that should have tyre issue worries. I once saw a 12-hour endurance race in these Skip Barbers, right? And they only had to change tyres once, so which tells you it's like pretty much having 4 Oreos for tyres with the way that those tyres do not break up in any way, shape or form. But what you would say is that Alexander Wilford was just too aggressive on that curve at turn 6. You don't get an off-track incident point by cutting the corner that much. So the key is, how much can you cut at that section of track? And crucially, we've seen a lot of drivers try and take a lot, but there is that higher anti-cut curve which is there, which I think is what Alexander Wilford hit and caused the slide.
Into the pit lane go a few drivers, and this may signify a two-stopper here, Jake, because that has been a possibility with some of the races we've seen in the past. The finale comes to mind, for example, for season 28, with some of the strategy. Might be the possibility here, some drivers having to go for the two-stop.
David Burns in, Wojtek Potaszek in, Gordon Vandenbergen in then to the pit. Ludwig Sauer and Nathan Wade also coming into the pit. So they were able to make their strategy work by pitting early, but they'll be needing those couple of laps to get themselves back up to speed and get themselves going again. It'll be key to see who comes off of the pits first. The answer is overwhelmingly David Burns, but he'll have Potaszek there and Vandenbergen for a little bit of company. And all three of them looked very similar in terms of their pit lane times.
All about 15 seconds in the pit lane. Krumholtz quickly closing on up to all this. He is just now getting within range of a couple of the drivers after his 12-second stop, but still a sizable bit back compared to those who are up towards the net positions for what are some of the top running positions. But Budgen, Von Roberts, and Wilford are all grouped together still in the top 3. Randall just holding on in the 4th spot. See if they elect to come on down at 30 minutes on the clock. Budgen way wide. Here comes the arc to the pit lane. Everyone in the lead pack having to go for the two-stop as a deep break for Von Roberts.
Oh, and you have to be alert to the line, of course, here at this Long Beach circuit. It is late down in the pit lane, so you have to take the right-left to get through, and then you've got to brake for the commitment cone, which always is a little bit of a scary situation. But you hit your marks, you look to get your fuel up and in, and get yourself back going again. And look very closely how nobody is taking tyres. Do not expect anybody to go and take tyres. Question is, where is David Burns? Right now, he's running through the final corner, and he'll be looking to go, but everyone's still got to take that transit time, and it is 3 wide in the pits. In fact, they've still got the ghosting effect as they go through. Now, as they separate, they will be 3 wide coming off of the pits, and who's going to get no! Oh, no, in the pits. Wilford there, trying to work Kevin Budgen, thought he was safe, thought he had enough room, and he ultimately causes contact.
Well, the ghosting effect ended at a spot they weren't expecting. Wilford gets squeezed up into the wall by Kevin Budgen, and now it's Von Roberts up in the net lead with Burns in second. Randall has jumped up to 3rd. My goodness, what a moment in the pit lane. What in the world? As Von Roberts does a leap for joy for the race lead. And running off with the race lead with the traffic.
Oh, he is, and that was Kai Alpstad 1 lap down. So all of a sudden, David Burns, who is a wily character, he's got a very cool head despite the 3rd degree Burns nickname and moniker. He is up now into 2nd position, and he is looking to fly. Jeff Randall will be very, very happy as he's now up into 3rd. Kevin Budgen, with that contact, is back into 4th position. The front wing damaged, and here comes Wojtek Potaszek then in the Faux Rothmans Williams down the inside, and he will move up into 4th then and take that place away. And here comes Vandenbergen having a search.
Kevin Budgen with a lot of lost momentum and a lot of focus lost there. Wolford is out of the race as a result of that trouble. He is currently amongst those in the pit lane trying to get repairs done after mandatory repairs picked up from that contact scene moments ago. But that changes the complexion of the main pack. The teammates have been broken up, and now it's the matter of will the games continue as the battles continue up towards the back of the main group. Burns looks to charge his way forward at the head of the group.
I can confirm that Vandenbergen did get through on the damaged Kevin Budgeon, and such an important phase of the race. When you are 3 wide like that, you have to make that room, and I just feel that not enough people understand how the pits actually work in iRacing and how there is a difference. If you are outside of the lane, if you are on the transit, you can make contact in the pits. Everyone seems to think and believe, Justin, that once you're in the pits, you effectively have that ghosting effect. You only get that ghosting effect in the pits if you are down on the right hand side as it is on this track, because it's a clockwise circuit. If you're down on the right hand side and you are in the boxes, that is where you can get that ghosting effect. You do not get that ghosting effect when you are out on the left hand side of the lane as it is here, which is effectively the lane in transit. And look at how much trail braking Nick Vaughan-Roberts is throwing into the corners, trying to get that car to turn around.
Keep in mind, he did use the fast repair, so there isn't that flexibility in terms of if there's the major contact again when it comes to Vaughan-Roberts and the rest of the run. Currently, Vaughan-Roberts up by 6/10. For the check, and we mentioned him up in the 4th spot, trying to fall in towards this drought. Not going to be easy when it's a 1:32.1 last time by for the 28. Vandenbergen is closing again in the midst of this.
32.1, but the key for Potaszek with that 32.1 is the car in front did a 31.4. This is really costing Vandenbergen's race, and at best at this point you would say it's 4th position only that he will be trying to get, and Vandenbergen actually has just gone around. Oh, how has he saved that? Right up over that inside anti-cut curb, and it has caught a number of drivers out trying to be aggressive, and it is worth noting for Vandenbergen that that has cost him the tune of about 1.5 seconds. He's back with Budgeon and now Thorsten Seifert.
How in the world did that sickhead racing machine not get upside down and on its head is the main question there. That car looked like it was ready to flip over.
It was, and it just goes to show you how much faith and confidence you need to have in the car and how much in the balance. There is a car that has absolutely run into troubles and looks like it's missed the pits.
That's Titus de Jong, who has had more troubles, and that is with damage that's been picked up. The 90 wasn't able to lock it up in time to get to the pit lane. Chassis damage again for de Jong. Mandatory repairs again for a driver who already had a tow earlier.
Yeah, and that is disastrous. And speaking of getting back into position, Nick Vaughan-Roberts has just set the fastest lap of the race of 1:31.050, 0.3 of a second quicker than David Burns. He is absolutely ragging on his Skip Barber, try and break a second, break the draft, and break away in this race. He knows how important it is to get on the power and run away, because David Burns is there, and also on top of that, Jeff Randall. And Jeff Randall has been the quietest character in the room. He's been sitting there. He's just been waiting for an opportunity to fire his laser, to fire his shot, and run himself forward with a great opportunity.
Randall last race finished in 20th. Started off in the 12th position. Didn't get the track position at the Moto Daytona circuit, the 2008 edition of the racetrack. And we've seen struggles a bit, in fact, for Randall in practice and qualifying. What a bounce back for a driver who got bounced off of at one point after the slide and the crash into the wall for Maciejewski. Randall's still able to keep it going despite that.
Yeah, and that just shows the great determination, really, that Jeff Randall's been going forward with and driving with. He knows what he is capable of doing, and he is trying to keep himself in this race. And I think he's done a really admirable job, keep himself pretty much bespoke in this race. They are, at this point in time, over the halfway stage of this race. So they've got this to go forward and get themselves back. But I just can't help but feel that they all pitted a little bit early and that they might have to do a, quote, splash and dash at the end to get themselves in. Worth noting there's a really good battle going on as well for 8th position right now, because Remco Pleischer has Stefan Krumholz and the recovering Nathan Wade, who, remember, started in the pits for this race. He's currently inside the top 10. He's got eyes on 8th.
Currently, that's a bit back of the leaders. You see them having to navigate the traffic of Kai Alpstad, should say. But what a drive for Wade in this, as Wade cuts across the safety curbing, trying to find a way around for 9th spot, looking towards the left side, possibly into Decatur, heading to Pine Avenue, getting it to stick at the bottom, move Nathan Wade up to 9th.
And TK turn is such an interesting corner because there is the initial turn in that you have, and then the turning afterwards, it just goes on and on and on, and then you've got to pivot over to the left-hand side of the circuit to maximize your right onto Seaside Way. So you've got a lot of work to do in a corner like that, and that was very well done to move up into 9th, and he is doing absolutely everything correctly right now, which is try and find and overtake one lap, one corner at a time.
And that's the crazy thing when it comes to Wade. We talked about how things can function in terms of the start. You initially go on the grid, have to make a change. You have to get back on because it counts as you being on the grid initially instead of for the full counter in turn because of that. What do you think's going through the mind of Wade, knowing you've had to drive through basically the entire field to get to this point for a chance for the battle for 8th position, such as now, and a chance in turn to be able to go from what is essentially last to mid-pack now, possibly up to, maybe at the pace he's going, up to maybe a top 5 if he's lucky?
Well, here's the thing. He's 15 seconds off of the race lead. He's doing 31.7s that last time by. He's running very similar pace if you're looking to those leaders. But the key is going to be, well, how quickly is he catching cars in front of him? How quickly is he going to be running? So Kevin Budgeon is absolutely damaged at this point in time. You will definitely catch him. Seifert, I think, and Vandenbergen and Potocek, I think they're going to be a lot more difficult. I think it's easy to say he's going to reach 7th, to reach 6th in this race. I think he's going to have to rely on a little bit of misfortune somewhere for him to get to, but that does not diminish in any way, shape or form the achievement he's got. But look at how much damage Kevin Budgeon's got. It is really a case of he is needing a lot of TLC on that car when he exits Long Beach and heads off in 2 weeks to the next round of the championship.
You hit the wall at least 3 times trying to get us with a hairpin, it looked like there for a moment. That's how tough it seems to be turning. And part of the issue is, well, the car's bottoming out even more with the damage, but as well, you see how that front wing is? It's wiggling a little bit. It wants to fall off the car right now, and that could spell even worse trouble. It's also hurting straight-wise by more than a second lost. That's straight away.
It used to be in this sort of machine that damage really didn't do too much on these cars, that if you bent up the front wing a little bit, it was absolutely fine. But not only did they do a complete overhaul of this Skip Barber and update it to a more modern standard, but they also added iRacing's new damage model, Justin, which really does affect how a car handles when you do get that damage, as well as having the spectacular things of wheels flying off of it and front wings depositing themselves to the far-flung reaches of the circuit. Here's a look to the inside. Kevin Budgeon's not going to fight this one, takes a very wide line. Nathan Wade effectively could have put the entire bus service of Long Beach in itself through that gap.
Budgeon still 5 seconds to get up to 6th, about 7 or 8 seconds to get up to 5th position. Remember, at one point, Wade was 25 seconds behind the race leader at the start of this race after starting from the pit lane. The next driver up to try and pass, the 117 looking to go and look for a potential move. Instead, Budgeon goes into the pit lane to take the repairs. An early stop just inside the window to make it to the end, in fact, for the 18. Also bringing Krumholz with them.
Yeah, 18 minutes left on the clock. I'd say that is within range. They were running about 20 minutes on their opening stint, their initial stint, to get themselves through. Of course, these cars are fuel limited at 40%. of their tank. So that is a big difference. As you can see, the top three right now on your screen: Vaughan, Roberts, Burns and Randall. And it is now Jeff Randall who is looking to try and find a way through to try and pass David Burns. He's not going to find the angle through the TK turn, but over towards then Seaside Way, he's not going to have the angle here into this right. And again, you don't get a penalty for going over that curb and effectively cutting the track. It does leave it a little bit open. I do love how iRacing has effectively made it a little bit easier for people to go out there and drive around this track, because if you strictly drove this circuit, Justin, to the track limits that they have here, it would be an absolute nightmare, and I believe you would see 30 to 40% more accidents than you would do regularly, just by the fact that everyone's trying to avoid getting instant points. As in comes the leader.
Von Roberts had been leading in clean air the most of this run, looking as secure with the teammate. But this is decent timing if you're Vandenbergen, though, because a moment ago hit the wall, and now it's just bounced off Wade. Wade has just bounced into the 50, who had chassis damage. Wade coming into the pit lane as a result.
That is what you call a disaster. Vandenbergen had the tyre missing for a long time because he hit the wall coming onto Seaside Way. That was where he had his dramas, and he was trying to nurse that car to the pits, avoid the tow at all inevitabilities and possibilities. I think that's just desperately unlucky for Nathan Wade, who, yes, should not be in this position in the first place, but had been doing a wonderful job to recover it. Good news for Nathan Wade is he probably didn't have any damage to begin with, so he could take his fast repair and still be in position.
Still had the wing damage from prior. Remember, it's the 50 car who was running on his own initially. Here's some of the troubles you see with some of the sliding some of the drivers had. But this is the reason Wade here, partly coming on in right there in the midst of the corner. A bad spot to reach a driver significantly wounded with chassis damage.
Yeah, and here's the thing. There's not much that you can really do in that situation if you are Wade, because there's only so much of a turning radius that the Skip Barber has. You'll be on full opposite lock. So, sorry, on full lock, I should say, through the right-hand corner, trying to get things going. This is where the incident happened here. Down the hill, into the right, just again, a little too hot, and that's a heavy hit into those tyres. You can see how important it is to have those tyre barriers out there. Of course, IndyCar traditionally ran here, so that's why you need 4 rows of tyres through that section of track. Now, as I say that, Jeff Randall has lost a boatload of time on this lap. So where has that gone wrong for Jeff out on circuit? The answer is he spun just after the fountain after just taking the race lead.
As we're showing that replay, indeed. So the fountain going wrong for Jeff Randall. And he's come to the pit lane with the scraping race car after contact from the left rear for the spin. Brings the 117 with them to the pit lane as well. Burns, Pertocek, Seifert, along with Sauer amongst those trying to keep on going, possibly in the window for the short fuel strategy.
Yeah, and if they can keep themselves in the window, that is going to be key. But David Burns, I think, has been the cleverest driver of everybody in this field. He has been waiting and waiting and waiting and just being patient, not going to the front when other drivers have been taking that opportunity and initiative, because I think he's been playing the fuel save game. Very busy right now coming out of the pits. It always has been, always will be, and that then leaving the pits, I believe, would have been Remco Pleischer, who has come out just ahead of Nathan Wade.
So Wade taking about 4 seconds longer in the pit lane, about 3 seconds, should say, when it comes to what we've seen strategy and difference-wise. So an air spot to pick back up for Wade, who did not get the front wing changed as a result of that timing here. So he has kept the fast repair in the pocket just in case. Randall behind them has just bounced into the wall, keep in mind, who has cycled behind the 24. So what did we say about the luck there, Jake, in terms of the top 5 for Wade?
It could be on. It could be on. Nick Carty's just jumped into the pits, but I would say he needed a little bit of luck, a little bit of help And I reckon he's had that right now because he's got one driver behind him in the form of Jeff Randall. And with Jeff Randall's crash, I'm sure even Dr. Octagonopus couldn't have saved the car in that situation, and he has 4 arms. But at least at this point in time, he is certainly hoping just to pick them off one at a time once again. And he'll be looking at this with Remco Pleischer, with a car yet to come in the form of Duco Veenstra, then who will be due at second stop. This should be as simple as it comes down the inside into the Toyota turn at turn number 2. That's the first position gone. There goes the second. Veenstra well out of the way. Yellow helmet syndrome.
Fleischer with a bit of a checkup in turn, though, on Wade. They bottle themselves around for what is the 9th position on the racetrack. Remember, Wade's best position for the passes today. And TK, here comes the run for Wade. Behind them, a crash. Randall gets involved with Veenstra. Veenstra had bounced off the tire wall. And now, as the pit window is open for the short fuelers, a crash involving Randall.
Yeah, and Jeff Randall will just feel desperately unlucky that all of it's come along at once. He's so committed to the corner, he can't actually bail out of it. It's off camber through there, so ultimately you are just hanging on to the car, and once you've committed to turn in, that's it. You are committed all the way around, and he's in the barriers now properly, and that will be race over.
So Jeff Randall, who is in the conversation for the top 3, if not the win at one point, has everything fall apart in the past few minutes. You see just how bad that damage is.
Yeah, that is absolutely horrible. He had that issue to come in, and then the next section, he tried to get back in on the stop, and it did not work. And there's been another issue out there for the 20... get another little look at this then. Here's where it initially happened. Yeah, up over, and you're a passenger at that point if you're Veenstra. And that ultimately leaves Randall with nowhere to go. And that is one of the pitfalls of street circuit racing, is that if someone else has an incident, you're very likely to get caught up in it. Speaking of getting caught up in it, Nick Vaughan Roberts has worked the oracle here. He's got a massive gap over David Burns now, who is in second position net on the road. And that gap right now stands at about 2 seconds at this point in time. So a really, really good stop from Nick Vaughan Roberts. I think he's tried to underfill it to gain that advantage.
So that undercut call from the 27 working like a treat. The question is, what can Burns do to get back up there? He is still on that outlap for the difference maker, and these two have built up a buffer with the rest of their competitors in their pack, falling apart with the attrition by about 7 seconds. That time to the braking zone. Burns cut the gap, though. Burns is stronger under braking.
Yeah, Burns will be absolutely flying forward now with everything he can. He's got one job, and that's to chase down one driver yet to come in for that second stop, maybe trying a one-stop if they're really brave. That's Josh Brain, who is out there, but I don't think the numbers will add up for that. 10 minutes left in this race with Josh Brain in control, Nick Vaughan Roberts in second, David Burns currently in third position, third for the third degree, of course, at this point in time. Potacek in fourth, and I believe just coming to the pitch from fifth position was Georg Matushinsky, and I'm sure he will, at this point in time, fall a little bit down the order with his pit stop. I've just seen Marcus Beifeld just go on through, so that would be 12th, maybe 13th position.
So Matushinsky with the extra pit stop as a result of the early race crash, falling down the pylon to 12th. What could have been when it comes to Matushinsky, who was amongst those looking to charge back after finishing 8th last time out, after qualifying 16th position at Daytona. And with the final 9 minutes up on the clock, six estimated laps to go this time around, Brain has just ducked on in. So now the pit window comes to a close. Vaughan Roberts to the race lead once more. That gap, about 3 seconds still between him and Burns.
Well, the key now is what is the time. It looks at 2.6. It's actually 2.6 around on the gaps. It was a 31.4 from Nick Vaughan Roberts. It was a 31.6 from David Burns. So I think this becomes a very simple case of the gap's a little bit too large at the moment for David Burns. He's going to have to work hard to bring that gap down. But Nick Vaughan Roberts, I think, is doing everything right, provided, and this is a big one, provided he's got enough fuel in that tank.
12.8 seconds for Vaughan Roberts, 12.3 in the pit lane for Burns with a 3-lap difference. That will be interesting. Side pod now scraping even louder for Vaughan Roberts after the last curbs. There is a slight bit of wing damage on the left front for Vaughan Roberts now from these curbs as well to keep an eye on for the rest of this race.
Yeah, he certainly does have to keep an eye on it, and he will just be a little bit alert, a little bit cautious as to what is up in front. And speaking of the top 5 battle, I want to keep an eye on that as well, because Nathan Wade is catching down Thorsten Seifert at this point in time. On that last lap, 1.1 seconds eradicated from it. The gap was at 3.2, and it's not 3.2 seconds anymore, no matter which way you look at it.
Just shows that raw pace Wade has showcased in the early going here when it comes to this car. He's had to battle back from missing the start, battle from an incident involving a driver with a broken chassis. Now looking to come from the very back to what likely may be a 4th, depending on how things play out up in front. What a drive for Nathan Wade. 5 estimated to go, under 7 minutes on the clock for number 24.
Oh, I just forgot that Josh Brain actually pitted just then. So Nathan Wade in 5th, looking for 4th. That is massive in terms of this race. And in fact, there's been some other great drives in the field. Remco Pleischer is up 9 spots, 15th up into 6th position right now. He's having a fantastic drive as well. And it's a really understated drive from Remco Pleischer in the 117. I think that really hasn't done too much wrong in order to get his race in the way that he wants to. I will also say it's a really nice battle for the final spots in the top 10. Stefan Krumholz tried to hold off Ludwig Sauer, and behind him is Marcus Beifelt, who is 1 car back because Kevin Budgeon's in the middle of it. And that could be a really, really fun battle. 3 drivers are in it, and only 2 can get the top 10.
Krumholz tried the different strategies early on. It didn't play out the way the 744 may have wanted, though. Sauer still keeping it tight. Still needing to close up a bit more is Beifelt, up towards the front. Wade looking for 4th position. Thorsten Seifert trying to hold on. The 76 continues to play defense. Wade trying to go a little bit tighter, has the draft.
Has the draft, but he's going to have to use it properly. It's not going to happen initially, but it's now when you're going over 150 kilometers an hour where it starts to hit and it starts to tell. Through the right then of the opening corner, moving to Toyota at turn number 2, pulls up alongside as they drag race their way towards the left at turn 2, and it's easily and comfortably done by Nathan Wade, who qualified 3rd on the grid, mind you, had to start from the pits and has got himself back up into 4th position. This is a masterful drive, and not only is that a masterful drive here, Justin, that is the sort of drive that saves championships.
Especially when you think about things by the end of a title run, you never know how big these runs can be until you stack up all the points. You have to be able to get the best runs possible. Speaking of drivers getting runs, Sauer trying to build up one. They have Budgeon trying to find a way around with as-lap traffic as well, possibly. Krumholz a little bit tighter on exit. Sauer still can't find the boost to get around the 744 yet, with about 4 minutes on the clock by the time they get to the line.
This is the sort of place where they're going to get it, because the car's just gone in the wall there, and that's Duco Vainstra once again, who has just overshot the corner slightly, run it into the barriers, and that'll be a tow. And with the fast repair already taken off the car, that should be the end of that. But again, Stefan Krumholz up only 2 spots, but Sauer is definitely looking for the right way to go through. And if he is wise here, Ludwig Sauer, he might try and allow Kevin Budgeon to go back through on him and unlap himself. He could maybe use Kevin Budgeon getting by Stefan Krumholz as essentially a pick to open up this track open up the opportunity and gain that place. But he'll have to do it very quickly because they're inside the last 3.5 minutes.
And an estimated 3 laps to go to get the job done as well. Keep in mind, they're also keeping within the time range of Josh Brain for 8th position. So this may spell up to what could be a 4-position battle. Krumholtz, tight lifting off. Brain able to pick up a little bit of distance in turn. Krumholtz looking to hold on with some of the drifts. Sauer trying to find a way to build it up. Nearly to the wall. Budgeon still waits in the popcorn seat as the lap traffic.
Yeah, he certainly waits, but that's all he can do at this moment. Wait, I will say it could be up to 7th because Gordon Vondenbergen at this point in time did a 33.4 that last time around. That was a second slower than all of the cars behind. So Gordon Vondenbergen right now, and he's going right to the playbook here and trying to use all of the circuit to break the toe. This is the one place I wouldn't want to do that in any way, shape or form, Justin, just because if I get it wrong, it's not, I've just clipped the grass, it's, I've hit the wall.
And in turn, significant damage could be picked up with the wrong decision. A little bit of a wider arc for Vondenbergen, who does have some wing damage. Now going for the snake down the front straightaway. Run up East Shoreline Drive. 2 estimated laps to go. 2 minutes to go on the clock. Vondenbergen continuing to hold on with the buffer. No moves quite yet in the midst of this pack. And the battle for 7th all the way to the edge of the top 10. Seifert and Fleischer is also close for 5th position on the track. So multiple battles starting to form up for the final lap and a half.
I'd expect Seifert potentially to lose the position to Fleischer. Fleischer gained 0.6 of a second on that last lap and is certainly charging forward. The question's going to be with Josh Brain, is he going to find the right way forward in the mock-up brawl? And he absolutely will, because that was wide from Gordon Vondenbergen, scraping up against the wall. You could hear it there with the X-Audio 2 sound that's there. And I think Vondenbergen now might be limping this car home and might have just cost himself a top 10.
Indeed, under attack from Sauer for the 9th position. Picking up spots, Brain and Krumholtz from that mistake to move around and jump around on the pylon. Here comes the run for Sauer. Does he take it? Can he get enough pace to do it? He tries it. He shows the nose. Vondenbergen the squeeze. Coming up to the final minute on the clock. Vondenbergen holds on the defense.
Vondenbergen was actually trying to pivot to the inside to attack Stefan Krumholtz. Oh, it's a huge accident. A huge accident. Ludwig Sauer running to the back by Kevin Budgeon, who did not stop for love nor money as he hit the brakes. He was not expecting that. And a big accident there. And I'm not sure quite what's happened, but Kevin Budgeon, that's a very clumsy accident. And it was bordering on the one thing you don't want to say.
What a time for that as well. Sauer loses the top 10 for now from it, with Marcus Beifeld passing on by. Down to the final few moments up on the clock. You see that battle continuing to shuffle onto the racetrack as well. Several of the battles, in fact, should say. Fleischer has passed Seifert in the midst of all that. But with now 1 second to go on the clock, waiting for the signal, there it is. White flag now signaled on track. Nick Von Roberts worked with the undercut to be able to try and jump up ahead of David Burns. It was tight for much of this race. It came down to Von Roberts and Burns, and in the end, Von Roberts out-strategizes third-degree Burns to take the checker flag. He wins it at Long Beach.
That is a very, very astute drive. Managing the damage on that first stint, getting through, was wonderfully done. Fleischer on the last lap, then through on Thorsten Seifert. That will be a change then for 5th position, and an important one. We got side by side in the final corner. Krumholtz here. Oh, he's hit the wall on the inside as Krumholtz trying to get aggressive, and he won't have drive off the exit now, so Gordon Vondenbergen is going to get an extra position here on the drive to the line, unless he's got no top-end speed. Line comes quickly. That'll be close between those two. It is Vondenbergen who takes it, and takes it by 0.06 of a second.
What a race, to say the very least. Most of the competitors are now starting celebrations. In fact, the parade lap, the top 3, for a moment, all congratulating one another for what was an incredible race with all the battling. Give credit to Matt Jasinski, the last driver on the lead lap, to finish in 13th Drivers complete the runs. It's Vaughn Roberts who gets the chance to celebrate. Race results and post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel for absolute beginners here from Long Beach.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ride around the world.
I'm Mick Claridge, and I'm going to ride around the world on my bike.
My son, he gave me advice at the start of this ride, and he looked at me and just said, "Dad, don't be a moron."
Let me do my animal signal to gain their respect.
How's it going, Sally? Yeah, I'm alright, Mick. How's it going? Worse than that bit in Lord of the Rings where they go into the top and the spiders in the tunnel. I'm just hoping there's a spider at the top of this one to kill me. Freezing.
And I failed. I moroned up the ride.
Welcome back to iRacing's virtual Long Beach, California, after an eventful race for the Absolute Beginners League here in the state of California. Let's take a look at your unofficial race results after what was a strategy that helped pick up Nick Vaughn Roberts the victory, but what a slide about for a lot of that throughout the race. Some wing damage to overcome, some different near spins to overcome. In the end, he still wins by more than 4 seconds over Dave Burns. Then it's Polacek rounding out the top 3, a charge from 9th, while Nathan Wade, one of the drives of the season so far, all the way from the pit lane after an issue in the starting grid to be able to get back to 4th. 19 seconds back of the race leader still, but a top 5 regardless over Pleicher. Then Thorsten Seifert in 6th, Josh Brain, Vandenbergen, and Krumholtz, along with Marcus Beifeld, the top 10.
Moving over then into 11th position, Ludwig Sauer ended on the wrong end of the top 10 with Nick Carty in 12th position. The final finisher on the leading lap of all people ended up being Georg Matushinsky, who started in 5th position, had an incident early on in the race. Frederick Neptun was the first driver a lap down in 14th, along with Nicholas Anderson in 15th. Dave Dowson ended up in 16th position. Kai Alpstad finished 17th, ahead of Kevin Budgeon, who was right up there at the pointy end of the field. Contact out of the pit pretty much put an end to his run. Duco Veenstra in the second half of the race was very barrier heavy in 19th. And rounding out the top 20 ended up being Vladimir Stajkal, there, the Czech driver.
Jeff Randall DNFs in 21st, Titus DeYoung 22nd, Alexander Wilford from one of the more bizarre pit incidents you may see in 23rd. Then you have Klaas Louden in 24th. Rounding out the drivers who took the start today is Christopher Giros. That's a look top to bottom at your running order today. Melhorn did not take the start here in Long Beach. Now the celebration's on in the camps for Vaughn Roberts, Burns, and Protocek amongst your top 3 competitors. You also have Wade with the stellar drive through the pack. Let's get our post-race coverage started, shall we, to see how some of the emotions go through as we wait to hear from Vaughn Roberts. Why don't we hear from David Burns, who picked up the second place run today. David, second place on the podium here in Long Beach. How are you feeling?
May I just say I am incredibly sweaty. I'll not ask you to conjure up any mental images, but it's very, very warm in Scotland right now, so I'm more surprised that I finished than anything. I am really happy with P2.
From 6th place up to 2nd, how would you describe the racing in that lead pack today? Because it seemed to be the mixture of calm, but also you never knew when the attrition would strike.
Well, to be honest, when I've been practicing a couple of days and I was quite happy with it, but it just got incredibly warm. And when you've got VR on your face, so for the practice session, I felt so inconsistent. So sitting on the grid, I thought, I'm going to kill someone. I'm going to kill someone. I'm going to end up in the wall. So it made me feel slightly better when everybody else was a little bit erratic and I could hang on to them. So yes, it was erratic in places, but it made me feel good.
So an early start to the season going well for the campaign. A 6th place at Daytona on the 26th, June 26th. Today, 2nd place. How would you feel about the start of the season then for you, for season 29?
I think it's going pretty well. Race 1, I had some issues with my fuel program, so I had to do it on the fly. But one of the most interesting things was I finished across the line on my roof, which was quite funny. But yeah, going quite well.
With that, anyone you want to thank or give a shout out to today?
Fellow admins, everyone new that's joined, some nice, quick people and some really nice guys, and yourself for doing the broadcast as always.
Thank you very much for your time, David. That's David Burns coming away with 2nd step of the podium here today in this one. 3rd step of the podium went to Wojtek Polacek. He's with Jake.
Wojtek, a race which in the early stages I would say was very, very close, very claustrophobic, and always was waiting for the blue touch paper to effectively be lit. Did you feel in those early stages it was all about setting a rhythm, keeping in with the tempo, especially as everyone was just itching to get aggressive and trying to make moves?
I was afraid of the first 2 laps with the cold tires, to be honest. I was telling to the guys that I might not finish the race, or I will get off the track on lap 1. But I think it was about handling this issue over the first 2, maybe 3 laps, and then trying to get a consistent tempo. There was a bit of a fight with Gordon and Thorsten, but hopefully I managed. But I think that after the pits, I was just unable to keep up with the front.
We've been seeing how Long Beach has been a very bumpy circuit and a very tough circuit, but how crucial is it at a track like this that you have a little bit of leeway when it comes to track limits, that you don't necessarily have to be too worried about picking up off-track incident points or anything of that ilk, knowing that the barriers are probably the biggest challenge and the biggest threat around here today?
Oh yeah, that's scary all the way. Like every single corner, you're thinking if you're gonna crash or not. They were just sometimes inches from the wall. I think I clipped it once or twice, and fast repair helped me. But the biggest issue was to get a good line on the exit of the hairpin last corner. That was when I struggled the most.
So there are a few struggles there, but we go to another technical and twisty American track next up. It's a run to Sonoma, but it will be the IndyCar layout from 2008. So how are you expecting to challenge that in terms of a lesser-known variant of a very, very tough circuit?
It's going to be difficult. I haven't raced there in years, to be honest. So probably gonna try to get more practice. I didn't practice at Long Beach. Maybe it's good. It's a bigger surprise for me, but Sonoma will require much more effort.
Well, the floor is yours, Wojtek. Anybody you'd like to thank?
I'm just happy for all the guys that joined the race. It's really nice to see such a big grid in the Skippy race. So let's keep it up despite the holiday period.
No worries at all then. Wojtek Polacek then finishing in 3rd position. A fantastic drive from him, Justin.
Polacek indeed charging through, but what a drive for the next driver standing by, Nathan Wade, after an issue, it appears, through the starting grid procedure, had gridded up, backed out, jumped before he could jump back in, had the race about to start within the next second or so, had to start from the pit lane, had to come back from 25 seconds back of the race leaders, and comes away with a 4th place run. First of all, how would you describe your day, Nathan, from your perspective?
Hi guys. I'm massively disappointed with the start, to be honest. The only reason I had to back out, I realised I couldn't disable the tyre change when I went into the pits because I didn't have a button mapped to select the black box. So I quickly jumped out, went into the options. And obviously when I came back, I was sat in the pit lane, which is a bit disappointing, especially when it's my favourite track as well. I feel like I've got really good pace here, but I will take a 4th position after all that. It was a very, very hectic race from my end.
Was about to say, how was it trying to figure out how to get yourself through the pack cleanly and efficiently to be able to get yourself into this spot, to be able to come away with the top 5?
Full send, if I'm honest. I knew every time I saw someone I had to make sort of unorthodox moves, because if I just waited till the straights, I'd lose way too much time. And I'm slightly annoyed because I was catching third place towards the end quite a lot. I think it was like a good half a second each lap sometimes. So I'm kind of annoyed that I could have got a podium, but it is what it is. It was a nice, fun, and enjoyable race. I probably had more fun starting in the pit lane than what I would have if I'd have started third. But nice, enjoyable. It was a good recovery. So overall, I'm extremely happy with it.
Now, touched upon this with David Burns. Of course, you picked up that victory at Daytona where David mentioned he finished upside down. But, of course, good points so far. You're amongst some of the top points runners in the early going. How would you describe the focus then for the rest of the campaign now, knowing how strong the first two races have been, first and fourth?
To be honest, I just need to make sure I don't miss the start. I think it would have been a close battle between me and Nick this race. So I think my best or probably worst position would probably have been a second. I can't really remember how the points work, but I believe Nick should overtake me now. But it should still be quite close. So as long as I can stay in front of Nick for the rest of the season, then I think it all should be good.
Any shout outs to give out for you today?
You guys for running a brilliant broadcast. It's nice to watch it back and see the action I missed later on, and then all the races in that race that I passed, because no one made any dodgy moves or anything stupid. It was all fair racing and smart racing. So I just want to thank you all for not causing in a big crash.
Well, thank you very much for the time, Nathan. Congratulations on the charge for the pack after missing the start.
Thank you very much, guys.
That's Nathan Wade coming away in fourth. I'd like to thank him, as well as Polachek and Burns, for taking the time to speak with us during post-race coverage here on GSRC. And Jake, your final thoughts on what we've seen here in California?
I believe what we've seen today is a typical race here at Long Beach. It's a very, very tough circuit. It is a high attrition circuit. And it's the sort of place today where you needed to be switched on 100% all of the time if you wanted to get yourself to the end. I think we saw some brilliant technical driving. We saw great recoveries through the field. And it's one of the few circuits actually there on iRacing where the difference between a good driver and a great driver actually shows itself. And it really did prove so today in machinery like the Skip Barber Formula 2000s, which effectively says to anyone who picks it up, you have the ability to be good in this car. It's a very good car to get good at and to learn iRacing, especially from the lower formulas up. But to be great in a car like this, the difference really showed with the likes of Nick Vaughan Roberts.
Absolutely, when it comes to today. We'd like to thank the ABL community for taking part in what was an exciting race today and for their support in their respective series here. We'd also like to thank the companies who provide the software and hardware for a broadcast listed up on screen. Additional thanks to Jude Lawn, who provides her wonderful music. Check out our Bandcamp for more of her awesome work. Thanks to the team today in Jake, Zach, and Dougie. You can find out more info about GSRC at globalsimracingchannel.com or through our social media. You can also check out our merchandise store at gsrc.storeandvy.com, as we will keep a link in the description below. And don't forget to hit the YouTube channel subscribe button as well, so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. We have plenty of upcoming races for other series listed on your screen, so be sure to check those out and mark them down your calendar. Don't forget, at 5 p.m., it's Sunday Drivers' Cup to continue what's expected to be an action-packed weekend of action here on GSRC. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.